Chapter 17. Mr. Phelps rolled over and reached unsteadily for the phone that lay beeping at him. He picked it up and looked at the screen through bloodshot eyes. 5:30 a.m. His jet had touched down at Dublin Airport from Somalia the day before. His battle for survival on the Somalian tanker had been one of his most haunting experiences. His own life had hung in the balance on several occasions. The screams of those betting, their faces flecked by the blood of the fighters, still rang in his ears. He'd gone up against the best of the competitors, but admitted to himself he'd only survived because of the money he could pay to patch him up between bouts. He'd finally been beaten on a technicality. The man he'd left for dead had risen behind him and knifed him expertly in the back. He should have slit his throat when he'd had the chance. Pressing the GPS, he watched as the screen switched to a location in London where a point glowed. He turned it off, lay back and allowed his right arm to rest on his forehead, inhaling deeply. The mute light of an autumn morning singled out layers of blue wood smoke suspended in that derelict room from the final throes of last night's fire. Sitting up, he pulled his bruised legs from under the worn blanket and placed his feet on the hardwood floor. Reaching across to the bedside table, he pulled the top of a hypodermic between his teeth and jabbed himself in his thigh. He began examining the different wounds he'd suffered. Some had been initially stitched, but had subsequently been stapled on top to prevent them ripping apart. In the end, he just insisted on stapling. Yes, he could pay. One nasty bite wound on his calf still needed his attention. He stared at the faded and torn curtain hanging from its wire across the small window. Rising, he walked exhausted to the bathroom before striking a match to light the candle above the sink. Looking at his distorted reflection in the dirty mirror, he ran the only tap to a gurgling, spitting spurt of ice-cold water. Splashing some on the mirror, he wiped away the grime to reveal his tangled beard, long hair, and dark, glittering eyes. Lifting his injured leg into the sink, he tugged free the dry bar of soap from the fractured porcelain and ran it under the water. Drawing his nails along the soap, they soon became compacted as he gingerly rubbed them over the staples in his calf. Squeezing the flesh together between his thumb and forefinger, he manipulated the staples out, allowing them to clank into the sink. As each one fell, scarlet blood oozed afresh. Once the last staple had been removed, he doused the bite with soapy water. Threading a needle, he began to expertly sew up the wound. Lifting his leg out of the sink, he examined his handiwork. He flicked out a cutthroat razor and began to shave. Within the hour, he was washed, cleanly shaven. His hair was shortened, and he dressed in a suit. Stepping over to a table covered in a variety of laboratory flasks, beakers and cylinders used for distillation, he poured a clear liquid into a small bottle. Writing on a label and applying it to the bottle, he ran his finger over it. It read, "Compliance." Picking up another, which read, "Comfortably numb," he downed half the contents before placing them in the departmentalized box, along with all the others, and closed the lid. Before shutting the door of the woodsman's cottage behind him, he straightened the only picture on the cob walls. It was of Monica in her school uniform. He stepped out into the dense wood, holding his box. Finally reaching a wooden stile, carefully he climbed over and onto the dirt track where his SUV was parked. Sitting behind the wheel, he pulled away.